Hello, welcome back. It is week 120 on Out on the Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week?
I am moisturized, I am in my lane, and I am thriving over here. Jeff, how are you doing?
You could say I am feeling good as hell this week, Alex.
Jeff, here's the thing. I didn't realize I was teeing you up for it, but you beautifully caught the ball and ran. We got more hot plopping news off the top. I love when you come in and give me these. Let's just get into it, Jeff.
Yeah, we got the cheese may, as they say here in Texas. We got the hot, juicy goss.
Mm.
Uh, if anybody pays attention to any sort of pop stars or anything like that, I'm sure they've seen this, but Lizzo has herself in some very hot water. So she is apparently I'll back up first and say, if people don't remember when Lizzo came out, it was all about body positivity, kind of loving the skin that you're in, so to speak. Being, not caring what people have to say about you, just be willing to have a good time and just being a nice person, making people feel good. Well, that turned out to be the antithesis of how she actually is as a person, because apparently she has engaged in some pretty like severe sexual harassment with a some of her dancers out at a club. She was like making them do stuff with the dancers at that club that they didn't want to do, and basically kind of, I feel like, making them feel like their job was under threat. Also straight up fat shaming some of her dancers. Now I'm not going to go, too far into this because I'm a bigger man. I take the high road, but glass houses, Alex, glass houses. And she seems to be taking up permanent residence in one right now.
That's a tough look. That is a tough look for the big girl, and that's the thing. Her whole squadron, I didn't she like pick them on a reality show called like Make Way for the Big Girls or something like that?
It could be. I don't know anything about that part of it, but I think they were picked specifically because they were helping promote, the body positivity, and that I fully agree with. So if all it was that, and none of this stuff happened, then this would all be good things, but all this stuff did happen, and these are very bad things now.
You can't host a competition called "Come on, dance, fatty," and then when they show up and you've put them together, be like, "You fat pig, what are you doing?" You
Yeah,
can't do that. That's false pretenses.
it's false pretense, and it's like absolute, like, I feel like you invite people to come and do that, and they probably get excited because they may not get a lot of opportunities to do that, and now they do. Now they have a chance, like, even though they don't have the typical like dancer body or what you might expect in a music video or something like that, they're getting their opportunity, as well they should. And then they have to deal with this. So they get the opportunity, but then it's at this cost, where she's just apparently an absolute terror in real life.
Are there any specifics as to like things she's done or said or anything like that?
So there was, people can look up the specifics here because I don't want to be describing things incorrectly, but at the club incident I was telling you about, there was like a banana involved, and her basically trying to force people to perform certain acts on that banana as if it were something else. I think people
As
can pretty
what,
much
Jeff?
draw their well, as a classic phallic symbol, really. And so that was one specific incident. I think some other things happened at that club too, not involving the banana, but involving her like trying to make people do stuff with the strippers that they didn't want to do. And then also, I guess there was an incident where there was a DoorDash driver or something like that that like messed up her order, and she like blasted their picture online and like basically said have at her, like, to her fans. Just some like really questionable, mean, toxic, like evil spirited behavior coming from her.
Well, and that's why she used the body positivity movement, which again, you and I agree is a great thing. My sickness for the thickness is very well documented on this show. So we're in total agreement that this is a good thing. But she profited off of it and hid behind it and insulated herself with it because you can't make fun of her or you're fat phobic. You can't criticize her or you're fat phobic. If you're like, hey, I think you're a heinous bitch, she'll be like, you don't understand what it's like to be a fat woman and get called a heinous bitch. And it's like, we're not calling you a heinous bitch because you're fat. We're calling you a heinous bitch because you're a heinous bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see how demonetized we can get this episode. They have to get the money
Yeah.
back. But you get what I'm saying? Where it's,
we're gonna have to pay the production crew to throw some bleeps in there.
we'll just, purchase them a couple sandwiches on the side, sweeten the pot. But you get what I'm saying about like she hijacked a movement, hid behind it, and then like threw it in other people's faces when it was convenient to her. She's a psycho. I mean, we should have known she's a flautist, and they're like the weirdest fucking people alive. But yeah, she's a psycho.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to is like, never meet your heroes, I guess, because she was probably a huge inspiration to a ton of people. And with everything she was claiming to represent, like it made a lot of sense. There was a lot of people that were proud of her. Like it was great that she made it because she's very talented. Like there's no question about that. She can sing really well. Like she made some bops, she made some jams. She is a very good flute player. I don't know a lot of those, so like that's not an easy thing to do. But to match it up with the that stuff does not cover up how she's been clearly treating people in her personal life, and then it's bleeding over into her professional life. And it's just I don't know how disappointing it is because I didn't really care that much about her one way or the other, but it's just very interesting that the time marches on. It's a song as old as rhyme that these sort of things happen with celebrities, like people that are willing to get into this position or put in the work or step on the toes that you need to step on to like promote yourself to this level. You're also going to be someone susceptible to doing the types of things that she's been doing behind closed doors. And then all of a sudden being very comfortable doing those sort of things when the doors have been opened and you think you're basically immune to any sort of like blowback or retribution for it. Now, I don't think her career is established enough at this point. I think this is going to be pretty much kaput for Lizzo. I mean, I don't know who's going to be buying these albums. I mean, again, I guess we mentioned last week, like Chris Brown has stans. She also mentioned one time that Chris Brown is like her favorite person in the world in an interview. And I mean, it's just insane the kind of stuff, like the pebbles that are breadcrumbs that she's been leaving this whole time, that it finally took this lawsuit getting filed. And thank God these people did it, because how many more people was she going to do this to if they didn't go ahead and pull the trigger on that?
Well, and that's the thing. Again, she hid behind being a big girl who can sing, because she can sing. Her music ever since that, first of all, let's just go all the way back to the beginning. That first album is good. It's not great, it's good. The first track, "'Cause I Love You," grabs you by the throat, and like Juice and all that stuff, they're great. There are some really great songs in there. And then like half the album is kind of forgettable. And then the last one was Dog's Dinner. It was awful. So she makes crappy music, has a great voice, is talented, is a flautist. Everyone's always like, she's classically trained in the flute. How many of her songs incorporate the fucking thing?
And how else do you get trained in the flute?
Besides classically? Yeah, what are you doing, like
Yeah,
contemporary synthwave flute? Get out of here. No, I just like she built this persona where she came on the scene and everyone's like, "We've never seen an overweight flautist who can sing. This is something new." I'm always advocating for something new. So I was like, "All right, Lizzo, the most talented person in the world, but you got a gimmick here, and gosh darn it, I'm rooting for you. And you're real easy on the eyes as far as I'm concerned." And to then just like find out that they're a monster, it's tough times. But I disagree with you that it's the end for her. I think she's going to have a lot of apologists coming out of the woodwork. It's like Morgan Wallen. You'd think like, well, that's the end for him. And it was just the beginning.
Well, what do you say we talk a little bit about a new album that came out by somebody that we've actually talked about a lot on this podcast? And I think we've done one album by him, correct?
No, we've never done any
We've
posting.
never done a post album. Okay.
No.
So Post Malone released the album called Austin, and it's not named after Austin, Texas. His name is Austin. Isn't it like Austin Post or something like that is his real name?
Austin Post.
Austin Post. Yes. So I don't know what it is about Post Malone, but I've always liked Post Malone a lot. I think maybe just because he does seem, you see him like interact randomly like on people's TikToks and stuff like that. And he seems like just kind of a buffoon almost, but he's generally in a very good mood and very nice to people. Like he's always very excited when a little kid comes up and says they're a big fan, and you can tell like if he's faking that, he's the best actor in the world. So I've always like enjoyed him as a person. Now his music, on the other hand, there's some bangers, but a lot of it is just very much the same. It does that very much. He has that Post Malone warble that he does. He's got that very distinctive voice, when he's singing. But other than that, it sounds a whole lot like a lot of other that kind of mumble rap, that SoundCloud rap, whatever you want to call it. That's kind of what his career has been. Now this album definitely did a little something different. It's more of a, I guess, kind of pop oriented album. It had a very like kind of California laid back sort of vibe to it. But I don't think it was. I think it was more of the, not the usual sound, I guess, but kind of what I've come to expect from Post Malone.
I have no real basis for Post Malone because I've only heard like a smattering,
Mhm.
like some songs here and there. I don't think I've listened to a full album. I've heard a lot of the country stuff he's done, and that's really interesting to me. And I know that there was a lot of scuttlebutt around this, like, is this going to be his guitar album? And there
Mhm.
certainly were songs, and we'll get into that. But I was kind of the album art, as weird as this is to say, told me that we weren't getting a guitar album. We weren't getting a country album.
Mhm.
That's something I really want to see for him. He's built for a real special kind of country.
Mhm.
Um, so I had like a vague concept of what to expect. Um, and I don't know how I feel about what we got. So we're gonna kind of walk it out as we talk about this, I think.
Yeah.
Do you have like a fairly solidified opinion of this?
So with this album, it was none of it was bad. And the thing is, like, I think Post Malone as an artist is a lot more interesting than the music he's put out to date. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but the country stuff, like covering Sturgill Simpson, covering, just doing that. He's got a Hootie and the Blowfish song like coming out, Only Want to Be With You. That's like it's on pop radio, like it's a released single by him. So he does interesting things. Like he kind of does what he wants to do. And this album is definitely not like your Feeling Whitney or your White Iverson or your Rockstar that he did with 21 Savage. And like those are some like really, really good hip hop songs. So he is a good artist. And I think he has a lot of talent. I think he's just like very willing to go kind of a little more outside the box. I think of all the SoundCloud and kind of mumble rap artists, he's probably the one that I like the best just because I think he adds a lot of melody, or at least a lot more than a lot of other folks are going to do. He does Nirvana covers too. Like he has a broad range of influences that he like real it's not that he's trying to like pander to certain audiences. Like you can clearly tell he really loves this music, and now he's in a position where he can get really awesome musicians to play it with him, like he did with the Sturgill song, and he crushed that. And that like took over the internet for a while. That he was People were like, we need a post country album, and I think we really do. I think you're right. That would be so interesting to hear a country album. And he's a Texas boy, so he's clearly grown up listening to it, and obviously loves it. And the fact that he covered Sturgill Simpson and not like a Jason Aldean or a Kenny Chesney tells me that his country album is probably going to be something I'd be interested in, if that's the kind of country that he likes and that he prefers to play. This album is very much gave me like kind of a, I know this is a band name, and I don't mean it as like the band name, but like kind of a beach house, like a boho sort of vibe. Like it gave me a very easy breezy kind of 70s pop, like Laurel Canyon kind of feel. There were definitely some more upbeat parts, but a lot of this album, just like all of it started with some basic chords and like some sort of harmonization. Like almost every single song on there kind of started the same. It was different chords and it was different notes and things, but the structure just seemed to kind of always be the same with every song on the album. And there were a few like bright spots, but they were bright spots because they were different. I don't know if they were bright spots because they were like necessarily great.
And see, I am predisposed to really dislike the Laurel Canyon, boho. It's weird to say because like Frank Zappa was a Laurel Canyon guy.
Mhm.
I like the music, that output from that specific time period, but these people that are trying to emulate it, it's my criticism of that shitty Lord album that we did, Solar Power.
Mhm.
Is that what that
God,
was? Solar
that one
Sun or
sucked.
whatever? What a
Sucked.
plop. What an
Yeah.
absolute plop. And sorry, I was just making sure my microphone wasn't muted.
We're good. We're good.
Okay,
I'll
good.
flail my arms and scream if it cuts off again.
Give me the high sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So I'm predisposed to have a hard time with these kinds of things because I think that, California dreaming kind of thing has a tendency to go like way overboard into the narcissism and the navel gazing. Again, the Lord album was so bad about that.
Mhm.
Um, so I agree that that's like the aesthetic for this, and I was kind of like, oh fuck. I had a weird experience with this album, and I'll try to like quickly walk you through what happened with my first
Mhm.
headphone listen. It started off real hot for me. I was like, okay, not what I was expecting. This could be cool. Let's follow this. And then the album just continued to do these peaks and pits. There were like dips along the way. Nothing that in retrospect I loved, but stuff that I was like, okay, all
Mhm.
right, and took positive notes about, and then some completely forgettable stuff. So the result of this is it's a very listenable album, and I'm about to say some mean shit, but so is elevator music.
Yeah.
Some of the songs on this album are the soundtrack to A Visit to the Dentist. Like you could see these songs like blending in with like Bruce Hornsby Mandolin Rain. Listen to the mandolin rain. If you don't like that song, fuck you. But guaranteed every time you go to a doctor's office, you will hear that song. Um, but yeah, I had a tough time with this because there was stuff I liked, nothing I loved, nothing I hated, and just some stuff that like happened. And we'll get
Mhm.
into it, but there were some songs I'm like, it felt like a Xerox of a Xerox. I'm like, you just kind of like ran out of gas on this one. And I
Mhm.
guess saved it up for these other songs, which even though they don't all work, are like, you can't say he's not ambitious.
Yes.
There's a lot of ambition in this, and I think it's to mixed success.
And I think I do appreciate that he's clearly, he doesn't want to just be totally pigeonholed as a rapper, as a hip hop artist. Like he just wants to be a musical artist. And I think that's becoming much more of a thing nowadays where people just kind of want to dabble, and more power to them because you might end up with some really, really interesting stuff. Now, a lot of the lyricism on this is where I kind of have the biggest problem, I think,
Yes.
because there's a lot of like clever wordplay, but and he's capable of writing like very emotional, like kind of deep music. Like I Fall Apart is a very emotional song and it's a banger. Like it's really, really good. This one is not so much. Like you can tell he's feeling real things, but maybe it just doesn't feel all that believable the way he expresses it, I guess. And he says things, and this is going to go back to we need a Posty country album. Is he says things like my dinner comes in a box of 24 or something like that, clearly talking about drinking beer. And that's much more fitting in a country music environment, like that type of wordplay. Think about like Sturgill Simpson. Sometimes you blast off, sometimes you just smoke. It's that kind of clever. Not saying that my dinner comes in a box of 24 is as clever as Sturgill Simpson lyric, but you get what I'm saying in kind of the tone and the type of wordplay that is, and where it fits a little better than this kind of music. I think this kind of music is much better served to being like kind of love songs, that sort of thing when you have this sound. And you don't always have to match the lyrical content to the sound of the song. There's so many examples of like a very happy sounding song having a very dark sensibility to it. This one, I think it just doesn't, it doesn't have, it feels like it's trying to be very earnest in its lyrics. It's not being aware that it's trying, those other songs, like they're kind of being ironic. Like Death Cab for Cutie has a ton of songs that are great sounding peppy pop songs. And when you listen to it, you're like, oh my God, this is about depression, you know? And it's just, it's when you do it like that, it can feel very clever. It can feel very like enlightening when you kind of realize that, and brings a whole new meaning to the song. With this one, it just feels a little disjointed, I guess. It doesn't feel like it fits. It doesn't feel like there's a real message or reason behind it. Just that he had some clever line that he thought of and wanted to make sure it got into a song.
Well, and I would say the biggest offender of that one is one that I think is like philosophically kind of like, oh, that's kind of clever, but I think gets pulled off in a like pretty sophomoric context is waking up kills my buzz. That's why they call it morning. And at first you're like, ah, yeah, cool. And then you like look at the context of the song and like, I'm sorry, but the maturity level of the songwriting, there's an irony to the fact that when he was not accepted, there were a lot of rappers that were like, ah, it's another like white rapper doing like culturally appropriating our music. And I think he like took that to heart and like took that really hard. And then he like said some wild and weird shit about hip hop. He was like, yeah, hip hop's not a genre to listen to if you want to hear people talk about anything. No one in hip hop's talking about anything. Kind of reading between the lines, like I'm the only true hip hop artist here because I talk about stuff. And I know it sounds like I'm like mercilessly shitting on this guy, but go with me. I think it speaks to like the maturity level of the content on this album. I'm like, okay, if you know, music should be saying something by your metric, what are you saying here? Because there's a lot of confusion in some of these lyrics. There's a lot of driving imagery, speedometer, overdrive. Even in Landmine, which that song is
Mm-hmm.
very confused because there's a lot of driving imagery, but then it's like then a landmine. I'm like, one, you got to pick one or the other. It's a song about stepping on an emotional landmine, or it's another driving song. In which case, I encourage you to make an album of driving themed shit because it sticks out when you have like three of these. It sticks out when you have lyrics that are like, I'd trade my life for peace. We understand what he's saying there. I would trade my tongue for a taste. Tongue for a taste, which admittedly is catchy, but I trade my tongue for a it's like I'd make these Faustian bargains. I
Mm-hmm.
would give up, I would give it all up for glory, but it's like reused over and over again in different contexts. So you just kind of do get bogged down in some of the lyrics. There are some clever ones. I love like I can play that pussy like for Elise. Like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, clever insider knowledge, like classical music
Yeah.
nerd reference, but like that's one of the few things on the album I can reference, that and the one you said, lots of restaurants in Beverly Hills, but my favorite dinner comes in packs of 24.
Yeah.
Those moments were like very clever and too few and far between for me.
Mm-hmm. And I do need to point out the world keeps getting hotter, baby, but I'm too cool to die. That was a good one too. And that's the thing is like I don't know what it is. Like Post Malone, I guess he's had enough songs that I like enough that I'm always going to give him a chance. And he does enough interesting stuff, like when he covers the country songs or Nirvana songs, and I'm like, oh, that's cool that he has like a broad range of influences and isn't afraid to kind of do whatever. The problem is it feels like this album feels very directionless. It's like what are you trying to make here? Like
It's a
nothing,
good
none of
way of
it
putting it.
sounds bad. Like the way that you said it, it's a very listenable album, but don't expect a lot from it. Don't expect to come out of it like feeling like even anything more about him as a person, other anything that you didn't already know. He likes to drink, he likes to do drugs. That's all over this album is how much he enjoys those things. And it doesn't seem like he's at a point either. We're not at like the Dirt album point where it becomes like a very dark tale. But I do see a lot of interviews and videos and stuff of him lately, and we may be heading down a path of a dark tale with Post Malone. Like it seems like the vices are getting a hold of him and not letting go.
Well, and I honestly, I hope that doesn't happen, obviously. And I wouldn't know anything about that. I just don't follow. Because again, I'm like a
Mhm.
fringe Post Malone kind of guy. This is the most Post Malone I've ever listened to. But I was kind of expecting a certain level of intimacy from this that again, I hate to be like, he's fucking immature, but I think his songwriting's immature
Mhm.
because I think it's hard to switch out of that mode that brought you to the dance, not for popularity reasons. I just think some people have a hard time shifting gears. It's like, well,
Mhm.
I'm good at this, I'm comfortable here. So, Mike Love, don't fuck with the formula. One thing I will give him a lot of credit for is many of these songs are ambitious. He's trying to do a lot. He's trying to get really fancy. Unfortunately, he winds up putting a hat on a hat. He just starts to do something kind of cool. And then he just like, he takes it in this thing that's like technically appropriate. It's not like he's off key or something, but he does these strange like key changes and shifts, and it's disjointed. It's a little purposeless. One particular offender to me is Green Thumb.
Yeah.
That song, I don't know what the fuck he's trying to do there. He's trying to do like 9 different things. I'm not sure any of them work. They certainly don't work together. But I look at something like that and I'm like, well, you fucking put it all out there. You didn't mail it in. You tried. And on a lot of these, he tried. And there are like certain elements in isolation. The chorus of Texas Tea is probably the most successful part of that weird ass song. There are a lot of components that individually are like good musical moment. It's what I would call the Duran Duran phenomenon, where like you can have a song like The Reflex, which is all predicated on the catchiness of its chorus because the verses
Mhm.
absolutely suck. They're useless. So it's kind of a weird, again, I didn't hate anything on this and I didn't think anything was like awful. Some of it was bad, but it wasn't awful.
Yeah.
So it's just like a weird spot to be caught in where you're like, what is this? Who is this for?
Yeah, and that's why I'm going to give this one just stream it. Like I can't say skip it because it's not, I've certainly probably a lot of albums I've hated a whole lot more that we've talked about on the show. So it's like I'll say stream it. If you're already a Post Malone fan, you're probably gonna enjoy it well enough. If you're like me, it's just nice to hear something new from him. But I think you're probably gonna end up going back to previous albums. I think he's been a lot stronger in the past. Again, I think this is an example of I think him as an artist ends up being more more interesting than what he ends up making. And I don't know if that makes any sense. It doesn't here. That's all that matters to me, but I'm going to say stream it.
Well, that's sort of a flop on my philosophy with the Lonnie Holly album, where I'm like, as a piece of art, this is incredibly successful and interesting. It's maybe not like the catchiest listen. You know what I mean? It's like, I think I compared it to the Jesse Ware album, which was like, this is all music. This is
Mhm.
all a good time. This isn't like, I don't want to say it's not art, but it's not an art installation the way that the Lonnie Holly one came across, intended or not. That was like a really rich artistic experience. This is the complete opposite of that, where I go, again, it's not dog dirt, but I I just like couldn't find a way into this. Like the positive things I have to say, I said, I don't think it's interesting enough to seek it out. So I think for me, it's got to be a skip it, a
And
soft
that's
skip it.
yeah, and that's to me that's fair. Like I really I think it's most people are probably going to land somewhere between stream it and skip it. I don't know how excited folks are going to be to go out and like grab this one unless you're just a Post Malone collector and you just need to have all the albums. I don't think you're going out and buying this one.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm not closing the door on Post Malone, but sure wasn't any Postmates. You know what I'm saying? They're always consistent.
We need the country album, Posty. We need it.
We need
So
it.
so that'll be the redeeming factor. I think if you come out with something a barn burn, it doesn't have to be like a Tyler Childers level of like introspection and lyricism. Just something fun that you're having a great time doing, and just give us that because I bet it's gonna rock.
Just give me Posty the cowpoke. I'd just like to see it once before I die. You know?
Cowpoke Malone.
Cowpoke Malone, baby. Like, let's
Yeah.
just unleash it on us. Unleash it on us. Come out with that album, because when you do come out with that album, you can guarantee that Jeff and I are going to be there and we're going to review that sucker. We're going to wrestle it. We're going to rope it. We're going to hog tie it. See-wee. We're going to make it scream till the hogs come home when that album comes out. If that album comes out, the only way you're going to know if that happens is if you are subscribed. to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/C/out on that line. That's right, folks. We have all the back issues of the podcast. You're going to love them. They're going to take you back to a time and a place pre-pandemic, pandemic, antipandemic, all of it. We've got all the content housed there. We've got the singles series. Remember that? Bet you don't. We've got our reaction videos. Those reaction videos are easily the best loved thing. So check them out. You can see a whole playlist of them. They're all there. We have literally held none back. And you can see every drip drop of content that we've ever made in this beautiful country. And you can see it all at youtube.com/C/out on that line. That's right, folks. Make sure you're subscribed. The notifications are turned on. Leave a like, leave a comment. I think that's everything you can do, right, on a YouTube. So go do it on our YouTube, youtube.com/C/out on that line.
I thought I was hosting this podcast with Alex, but I guess it's General Patton now. But that was beautiful. And until next time.